Hi everybody, my name is Jake Snow. I'm going to start off by saying I love God. He means everything to me. Without God, I never would have made it this far. Throughout my life, I've had many people ask me if I was born this way, and I would always say no. Why I ended up this way is still a mystery. Sometimes God works in mysterious ways. If something bad happens to us, we don't understand why God put us through that. For the For a long time, I did not understand why my family and I had to go through what we've been through for the first 10 years of my life, and I had a lot of questions for the Lord. If I was born healthy, then why did I have my first seizure at 6 months old? Why did I have to suffer from seizures for 10 years? Why isn't my older brother and sister disabled? Why did God choose me out of my mom's three kids to live life this way? I'll tell you why. When God created me, He knew I was going to overcome nearly impossible odds to go on to do many impressive things in my life. I'm going to share a couple of Bible quotes that really mean a lot to me. These Bible quotes have helped me understand why God gave me life. The first quote is Jeremiah 29:11. For the plans that I have for you, says the Lord, plans for good, not evil, to give you a future and a hope. The second and last quote is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. When my first seizure happened, my mom was holding me. My mom felt my body go limp. Right there and then, my mom was put in a situation she had never been in before. But she didn't panic. Along with my grandfather, she rushed me to the hospital as fast as she could. My family and I would get used to seeing doctors and visiting hospitals. Over the next year, I would have a major seizure every 3 months. My, the doctors told my mom I had 3 months to live after each seizure. Then, when I had the seizure that caused my stroke, I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Because I was still a baby, the doctors gave me a very slim 10% chance to make a full recovery. They had told my mom I would never be able to walk again and I was going to be stuck in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. On Christmas Eve in 1991, something special happened. My mom calls what happened a Christmas miracle. After following my stroke, I spent 2 weeks in the hospital and I was released 2 days before Christmas Eve. So when I showed up to our family Christmas gathering, everybody was shocked. All through the night, several members of my family were holding me and thankful I was still with them. Then, after we got through opening up all of our gifts, I was on the floor playing with all my new toys when out of nowhere I stood up all by myself. When I did, everybody's head turned towards me. I took 2 or 3 steps under my own power and I fell back down to the floor. Everybody's jaw dropped as they gave me a little round of applause. My family knew a miracle had happened right in front of their eyes. My mom told me as she was clapping, she looked straight up in the air and she said, "Oh, Jesus is here." Going through therapy, I was able to make a full recovery, but I still continued to see doctors and stay in hospitals. Then in early January 1994, my doctor thought my seizures were getting worse than they ever been before, and he told my mom I had only 3 months to live. So he sent my family and I on a Make-A-Wish trip. If you don't know what the Make-A-Wish Foundation is, let me tell you what it is. It's a foundation that gives very sick children on the verge of dying a chance to do something they want to do before they die. They can meet and spend a day with their favorite athlete, actor, actress, or go wherever they want to in the world. I chose to go to Disney World in Orlando, Florida for 1 week. 2 months after we got back from our trip, my mom took me to the doctor. When my doctor walked in the room and saw me, the look on his face was priceless. He looked very confused. By this time, he thought I was going to be bedridden and waiting for death. But instead, I wasn't only walking, I was running around acting like an everyday toddler. My doctor knew that a miracle had happened, and he was wrong when he made the prediction that I was going to die. 3 years later, in 1997, God had given me enough strength to start playing sports. I began playing baseball and basketball. That same year, I began kindergarten at South Hutchinson Elementary School. It was extremely hard for me to go to school. Every day the kids would point at me and laugh because of how I looked, but the names they called me hurt me even worse. I couldn't figure out why most kids at school wouldn't accept me for me. When I was about to go to Kansas City at KU Medical Center for surgery, I was happy for a couple of reasons. The first reason why I was happy is I could get away from all the bullying at school. The other reason why I was happy was because the surgery I was going to have was going to stop my seizures for good. But that wasn't the case. Surgeons performed 2 different operations on me that didn't do anything to help me. When I got home from the hospital, my family and I were both bummed out, and I asked myself, why? Why didn't the surgery that was supposed to save my life work? I didn't know it at the time, but God was preparing me to meet a very special person. Before I left for Kansas City, the Hutchinson newspaper did a full front page story on me and the surgery I was having. A neighbor and friend of Kevin's parents read my story in the newspaper and put a copy of that newspaper in their mailbox. And thanks to that front page story, I met my best friend Kevin in the summer of 1999. Before I met Kevin, I didn't know anybody else in the world that had cerebral palsy. I thought I was the only one. Not having very many friends and being picked on constantly by bullies at school, I thought about committing suicide. Why should I continue to live if I'm never going to get a job and I'm never going to be able to live on my own? So at 9 years old, I tried to commit suicide by driving my mom's car into our garage door. After going through therapy for a couple of months, I realized that I made a huge mistake. I needed to keep living life and keep moving forward. My suicide attempt was unsuccessful because God knew I was going to be cured from seizures. It was Kevin's family that told my mom about the surgery that helped stop Kevin's seizures and where he had the operation. My family and many friends of the family set out to raise money for the operation, but we weren't alone. My family had a lot of help from the former representative of Hutchinson and Kansas Senate President Dave Kerr. Dave was the guy that talked to our insurance company into letting us go to St. Paul, Minnesota. By February of 2000, my mom and I were on an airplane heading for St. Paul, Minnesota to have my life-saving operation at Kansas Hospital and Clinics. After 12 grueling hours, I was out of surgery. When the surgeon found my mom in the waiting room and told her the surgery was a success and I was seizure-free, my mom had tears of joy coming out of her eyes. For the first time in 10 years, I was seizure-free. But the joy of me being seizure-free was short-lived. While I was in recovery, I ended up having 2 strokes back-to-back, and that night I slipped into a coma. The other half of my brain had shrunk to the size of a quarter. My mom told me while I was in the coma, her nerves were so raw, but she knew she couldn't give up. My mom was at my bedside night and day praying for another miracle to happen. Her constant praying soon had an answer. After 5 days, my brain grew back to its normal size and I woke up from the coma. When I woke up, everything I saw was real blurry, but I could tell that somebody was beside my bed. When I reached over to touch their arm, I knew it was my mom. I heard my mom crying, and I didn't understand why my mom was crying as she hugged me. When I woke up, it felt like I just woke up from a nap. I didn't realize I was in a coma, and I didn't know how close to death I really was. In the summer of 2001, I was 11 years old. That was the summer I went to church with Kevin and his family for the first time. During the morning message, the pastor said something that caught my ear and stuck with me. He said, God has a plan for your life, that's why He created you. From then on, I was on a new journey to find out why God gave me life. In the summer of 2004, I spent a week at a Bible camp called Camp Miniska. I was amazed with how much I could learn about Jesus in 1 week. I had so much fun that I decided to go back to camp in the summer of 2005. When I moved to Whitewater in 2005, I started going to youth group. After spending a couple of summers at Bible camp with Kevin, I had the opportunity to learn so much about the Lord and I knew there was a lot more I could learn. I continued to go to Bible study throughout high school, and I enjoyed every minute of it. In the summer of 2010, God put me in a challenging situation. My grandfather's illness was starting to get the best of him. To watch my grandfather go through an illness that has no cure was really hard on me. When my grandfather passed away on July 15th, 2010, I was upset and I was mad for a really long time. I turned to alcohol to deal with my pain. I couldn't understand why my grandfather passed away when he did. I not only lost my grandfather, I lost one of my mentors and heroes. It felt like I lost my grandfather when I needed him the most. I was 20 years old, fresh out of high school, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next with my life. Not having my grandfather around, I was lost and I didn't know what to do next. That was a very lonely feeling, and it felt that way for a long time. I was so lonely that I even thought about taking my own life. Then, after I had a long talk with my Uncle Mike and Aunt Jody, I started to turn my life around and start to look at the positive sides in life. I was old enough to understand that even though I lost somebody I love, life does go on. In the summer of 2012, I was sober for 1 year, but I still had a lot of emotional pain. Kevin asked me if I wanted to go to church with him. During the service, I sat there and I kept having flashbacks of my life, and that's when it hit me. If I'm able to overcome every odd that the doctors have stacked against me and find a way to make my dreams a reality, it's obvious to me that God has been with me all my life and He still is with me. My favorite Christian movie is Facing the Giants, and my favorite Christian music song is Our God is an Awesome God by Michael W. Smith. I decided to get baptized in 2013. Getting baptized was my way of telling God, thank you for giving me life and the life that I do have. Today, I still have cerebral palsy, but everything has changed. There aren't many people that can say that they've had 3 strokes before they were 10 years old, suffered from seizures hourly and daily for 10 years, have half of their brain taken out, and go on to live a healthy life. This is why the Bible quotes Jeremiah 29:11, "For the plans that I have for you, says the Lord, plans for good, not evil, to give you a future and a hope." And Philippians 4:13, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me," mean a lot to me. My mom has told me many times that I have the heart of a lion, because I do not give up on things. I will fight until I cannot fight anymore. I'm 28 years old, and on February 23rd of this year, I will be seizure-free for 19 years. When I was a kid, doctors thought I would never be able to live on my own. They thought I was going to be stuck living with my mom for the rest of my life. I'm now living on my own, paying my own bills, and I'm even driving a car. I never would have made it this far without my never give up attitude or my faith in the Lord. I like to tell kids that even though God has given me the strength to do what I have done, I am not a superhero. I go through ups and downs just like anybody else. I'm going to close with this wonderful story. In March of 2015, 16 months after I got baptized, I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life and do something I love. I decided to go on YouTube and search for motivational speakers with disabilities. That was when I discovered a man named Nick Vujicic. After I watched one of Nick's speeches, I knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I wanted to be a motivational speaker. Only a month later, on April 16, 2015, I gave my first speech at my Bible study. 3 days later, I gave the same speech at a Bible school class at my church. After speaking 2 times in 3 days, I knew I had a story to tell. I've told my story to so many people, it is amazing. Every time I get a chance to tell my story, I don't have any second thoughts. I believe in my heart that telling my story to others is what God created me to do. William Barclay once said, The two most important days in a person's life is the day they were born and the day they knew why. Today, it feels like I know why God created me. Thank you.